So, the word going around the campfire is that WWE is backed into a corner and they're going to have to call an audible, ruining a big surprise that was scheduled for Survivor Series in Chicago. The report we're hearing is that WWE is planning on announcing the last member for Team Cody for Survivor Series WarGames. A little bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear this, earmuffs or come back for the next upload. But the word going around is the final member for Team Judgment Day will be Drew McIntyre. And for the faces penciled in is Randy Orton. Now, a lot of fans are going, well, it'll be good to see Randy Orton. He'll get a good reception, great response. But it's not CM Punk. And with all the teases and the references, whether consciously or just coincidentally, over the last month especially, you gotta read the room. Punk somehow has to be there in Chicago, right? There's a lot of fans that feel that way. So while hearing that Randy Orton is coming back and he's gonna be the last member of Team Cody, on one hand, good to see the dude. On the other hand, damn, it could have been more special. That's how a lot of fans are seeing this. And WWE now knows this. So the word that we're getting is that they're going to suspend the original call to have Orton show up as a surprise. And they're going to announce it beforehand. Now, when is that? There's less than 2 weeks to go before the event. So whether it's Raw, SmackDown, you only got a couple 2-3 shows left to pull this off. But the word we're getting is that Randy Orton's name will be announced on WWE television before the Survivor Series WarGames. And this is to soften the tone for Chicago so that everybody that buys that ticket and shows up to Survivor Series in Chicago, they're not let down when Cult of Personality starts not blaring through that arena. Instead, voices blaring through that Chicago arena. This is WWE's way to put a lid on a pot of boiling water, because they knew if Randy Orton shows up instead of CM Punk in Chicago, that pot was going to boil over. So WWE was forced to call this audible and ruin a major surprise. Because Randy Orton, after all this time being gone, he's still a top star. Him as a surprise, the response, the feeling, that special moment would have been epic. But because WWE let this situation get out of control, now they have to calm everybody's expectations. So you say, well, BC, WWE never announced or marketed CM Punk, so it's the fans' fault for expecting it. But again, guys, I would say this. Half of that is true, absolutely. But you got to look at the flip side. WWE knew that this talk was out there. WWE rode this lightning bolt the entire time to market WarGames Survivor Series. Could Punk show up? They were reading the room, or at least should have been. They let this go on, whether it's a coincidence or there was full intent. There was too many references. A lot of them you can swipe under the rug, right? Like Rhea Ripley saying, I have to get something off my chest. How many times do we hear wrestlers say that? It's a lot. It's ironic, maybe coincidental, that it just happens to be at a time where everybody is wondering if Punk will be at Survivor Series. Bad timing, I get it. But there's been a lot of little ones like that. But then they get a little bit deeper, right? Like Corey Graves, who was at one time a really good friend of Phil Brooks. And Corey Graves, live on air, says the greatest trick the devil ever pulled. Well, that he knows more than anybody. That's one of Punk's famous promos, a line from that famous promo. Corey Graves knows that, but Corey Graves then went a day later and said there was no intent behind that. I also recite Dusty Rhodes all the time, he says. But I don't know, a little bit too coincidental. But then you see Seth Rollins stare right at the hard cam and call himself the best in the world during a live promo on Raw, knowing that Punk is this, quote, free agent, and that there's this talk about him showing up soon. Possibly. back in WWE. Why at that moment would you declare yourself best in the world and fan those flames? So Rollins knew exactly. You have to read the room because all of this teasing is eventually going to have a payoff. Or the flip side of that is you're going to have to pay for all those references. Because if you can't deliver, the crowd is going to be pissed. And then a couple weeks later, Rollins again with Michael Cole. And they make reference to the Puppeteer promo, another huge promo by Punk during his time with WWE. And all of a sudden you're using the words like the manipulator and the puppeteer. Again, you have to read the room. But then it goes deeper, right? You can easily say, okay, BC, there's an argument that all of that is coincidental. But then Shinsuke hits the GTS several weeks ago, right? GTS, of all the moves. Again, this is the failure of this. If this is all coincidental, this is the failure of the company to read the room. GTS, and then the USA Network takes that clip of Shinsuke hitting GTS, and the USA on their social media accounts played that clip on a loop. And do you know what they captioned it, that GTS? Best in the world. Showing Shinsuke hitting that GTS. And WWE, in case you're wondering, they never asked them to take it down. They could have easily done that. The relationship is the best. And that's part of their wrestling program for that social media account. So they easily, WWE would have said, you can't do that because we're pumping up this show and he ain't going to be a part of it. WWE did not care. Let the flames get fanned. Fuel that fire is what WWE was thinking. More interest for Survivor Series. But if you're not going to produce Punk in Chicago, then you're going to have to be prepared for such consequence of that crowd turning on you. Even if you got a big surprise like Orton, to the point where now we're hearing, again, that they're going to have to blow up their own surprise. They're going to have to call a massive audible and actually tell everybody that Orton will be that man at WarGames. But for USA Network to show that on a loop with best in the world as your caption, and WWE doesn't think to say, dude, stop, put that down. What are you doing, man? No, they let it go. Now you could say, well, see, maybe that's because Punk will be at Survivor Series. That's absolutely. At this point, that's the only other option. That's the only other option. Or you're hoping that this audible works. That you declare Orton once you make the announcement, the crowd live, and you only have a couple 2-3 shows left before Survivor Series, by the way. So they better make that announcement quick. And you're going to get the initial pop when they hear Orton's name. And then when he shows up in Chicago, you're hoping that that's just expectations were lowered. You all knew it was going to be Orton. So everybody just love having him back and just cheer loudly. Just don't even think CM Punk. Don't acknowledge. Don't do any of it. It's Randy Orton's time. That's what they're hoping for. Or the flip side is you still have Orton be that fifth man and CM Punk comes out in another form, another aspect, another situation on the show. That's possible. Takes out Grayson Waller, right? They like to do segments like that. A lot less impactful? Absolutely. I'm not bringing CM Punk back to screw around with Grayson Waller. But it's possible. And speaking of, that's just another of the latest that WWE has not asked their wrestlers to take down. Nothing. Grayson Waller, this is not coincidence, guys. Just like the USA Network and the GTS stint that they did. This is Grayson Waller posting a photo of him on commentary. And do you know what he says? Grayson Waller says, and I quote, "Even on commentary, no one can touch me." That is a quote from the pipe bomb, the legendary pipe bomb in Vegas from CM Punk. There's no way, not a fan today, not a wrestler today, everybody knows basically every word of that promo. So Grayson knew exactly what he was doing. Fan those flames, fuel that fire. And WWE's probably loving it. Yeah, get people thinking about Punk showing up. More interest. Okay, Well, now you better produce, Punk, or you're going to have to blow up your own surprise. And again, for the fourth time, that's what we're hearing. The latest reports is that they're going to announce Randy Orton ahead of time so that Chicago doesn't riot, right? That's the old signs you used to see in Chicago. Punk or we riot, or this person wins or we riot. Man, Chicago is famous for those lines. Well, they don't want the fans to turn on the show as a whole. So they're going to call this massive audible, it looks like. But that's what I'm saying, guys. Whether coincidence or not, some of these are straight out knowing what you're doing, looking at the hard cam, calling yourself best in the world, posting a pic saying even on commentary, no one can touch me. No, the puppeteer line by Michael Cole with Rollins. Stop. It's not coincidence. They're using CM Punk to raise interest for Survivor Series. That's fine if you can produce. And by the way, if you're new to the channel, I am by far not the biggest Punk fan. Most on this channel, all subscribers, channel members, they can tell you I'm not the biggest Punk fan. But I'll be the first to say, if you're going to use this guy to kind of raise interest, to pique people's curiosity, to get ticket sales, or people to buy your subscription service to watch this event, then you better pay the dude and produce him. Give the guy his money if you're going to try to make money on his name. Otherwise, just a dirtbag. To use somebody's name to try to get relevance and money. Stop. Dirtbag status. Pay the guy now. You better produce. This company knew exactly what they were doing. And now it's one of those situations. You made your bed, now you got to lie in it, you're backed into a corner, you find yourself in a pickle, and now your big surprise is no longer a surprise. For the fifth time, the latest report is that they are going to announce Randy Orton ahead of time now so that Chicago doesn't flip out. So that's telling me that they don't have CM Punk for Survivor Series. And this wouldn't be a big deal because WWE, again, didn't promote. It's not their fault. They should be able to run shows in Chicago and not be hijacked from CM Punk chants. No question. But again, you are constantly referencing this guy. And it's no longer just coincidence. You know what you're doing. The network that carries your show is going as far as to do it. No. Now it's your job to debunk that way ahead of time. They refused. And here we are with a situation where they better hope fans gravitate to Randy Orton. They better hope that fans are okay with no Punk in Chicago. WWE let it get out of control. WWE knew what they were doing. It's these situations that this company does all the time, and they feel like they don't got to pay for it. They're going to be just fine. The fans will eat up whatever they are given. Some fans won't do that. We'll see what Chicago does. Interesting, though. Randy Orton penciled in to be that last member of Team Cody, and it doesn't look like it's going to be a surprise. We'll see what they pull off in the next 2 weeks. I want to flip gears real quick before we take off. An injury last Monday to Ricochet. Now, if you guys caught my review, I said that there was a big botch, and I said it was from Ricochet. This is before I even knew there was an injury. They were just trying to do a who won it situation, right? 2 simultaneous pinfalls. Now, we found out that both Ricochet and who was being pinned? Bronson Reed. Both were supposed to be pinned. And then they were going to do a thing where Miz takes on Ivar, and then the winner of that takes on Gunther. So it was always supposed to be one-on-one Miz-Gunther, but they were supposed to set up a whole schmaz way to do it. I was thinking they were just doing a who won it sitch, and Ricochet still kicks out, but at the last second. But instead, Ricochet totally kicked out while the ref was just going into his 3 count. It was really awkward. It was a massive botch by Ricochet. And then we found out, no, it's true. He definitely botched, but it's because the lights were on, nobody was home. He was actually pretty much knocked out. In fact, he says he doesn't even remember most of the match. So that led to fans to think that, okay, obviously the concussion happened early in the match. Not necessarily, though. because he doesn't remember anything is just from the concussion itself. And then anything before it, you just don't remember. But I want to show you kind of the anatomy of that match, if you don't mind. Kind of dissect it a little bit, take you through it, and show you just a lot of wrong in this match. So let me get a swig of coffee, and I kind of want to run through this match with you, show you exactly where I believe. There's a couple of good opportunities that he could have gotten this concussion. So, swig of coffee, and I want to take you through this. Now, you see Ricochet being ricocheted by Bronson Reed into Ivar. Ivar will then take a Hurricanrana to the outside. Ivar does make it to the outside, but not before Ricochet is dropped on his dome piece. And it's here where a lot of individuals feel the concussion occurred. However, when BC went back and did the research, there's a more significant spot in the match where I feel the concussion was sustained. Now, some people say play stupid games, win stupid prizes. This style was going to catch up to Ricochet. That may be true, but you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You got guys like Hulk Hogan that spent their entire career doing simplistic leg drops, and that dude can barely walk today. If there was more of a connection with Ricochet, better on the microphone, a bigger presence, maybe he wouldn't have to rely on moves like this in matches that nobody will remember the next day, sadly. Ricochet then, moments after being dropped on his dome piece, has all of Bronson Reed land on his face on the outside. All of Bronson Reed. This was just a rough night for Ricochet, even before where I feel the concussion was sustained. Here is where things really go off the rails. Miz is trying to deliver like a bank statement type move, second rope. Ricochet thought it was the next move in the sequence, which is going to be a DDT. So he took it as a DDT on the second rope, lands right on the side of his head. Probably more than a concussion, probably a stinger as well of some sort. But the referee immediately checks on Ricochet while Miz is trying to set up for that aforementioned next move in the sequence, the DDT. The worst move you can give somebody along with like a tombstone pile driver if they have a concussion. But Miz doesn't really know what's going on, so he's going to deliver that DDT. No reason somebody should be dropped on their head this many times in a wrestling match for entertainment, guys. I have friends traveling the world wrestling now. I've been in that ring. That's not how you should be wrestling if you're getting dropped on your head 10 times a match. Sure enough, they set up the DDT spot, and Ricochet is upside down on his head at this point with what we already believe to be a concussion. Reminds me of Penta and Mox from a month ago, where Mox took 2 drivers. The first one he was concussed. The second one put him out multiple more weeks. So now the referee is really checking on Ricochet. Miz is trying to buy some time. Ricochet actually points to his head at one point too, so something's drastically wrong. On my Raw review, I called this finish a botch before I even knew Ricochet was injured, because they were trying to do a who won it situation, but Ricochet's arm is clearly all the way up when the referee is just getting to his 3 count. So this was a major botch. Now we know the lights were on, nobody was home for Ricochet. So now you see Ricochet's face. Oh shit. Ivar, Bronson, and the ref are looking at Ricochet like, what the heck, dude? Now Ivar's looking at the referee. The ref's looking at Ivar. I don't know. I'm waiting for word backstage on Paul Levesque. They're all telling me what to do. Now the referee's looking at the timekeeper area because they're getting word from Gorilla, not the ref. They don't want the ref to look like an idiot on air. So now the ref is going to go over to the Miz, who is celebrating. The ref at this point is calling off Miz's victory. Like, no, you did not win. While the referee is calling off the Miz's celebration, Samantha Irvin is calling Miz the winner. So Gorilla has told Samantha, we watched the replay, declare Miz winner. Now the ref goes over to Miz and tells him, you're about to get attacked by Ivar. They're going to call an audible to make Ivar look strong. This was not supposed to happen. So Miz is like, what? You could see his face. He was totally caught off guard, and you see Ivar coming at him like a fucking locomotive. So poor Miz is trying to get his balance as Ivar attacks him out of nowhere. This all was audibled. Much respect to these dudes, man. Just playing it on the fly. Here is funny because the referee is telling Miz you have to now eat a moonsault by Ivar. So Miz's night was supposed to be finished. Instead, he's got to wait for this 685,000-pound tank engine, slight exaggeration, to land on his face, because that's what happened. A little bit of a mismark there. and Ivar lands on Miz's face to end Miz's night. Oh, you can't make it up. So in closing, the biggest takeaway here is if you're training to be a pro wrestler, if you're in your backyard, you're on the trampoline, you're doing all the flips and dives that you hope are going to get you into one of these big companies one day, the biggest advice I can tell you is stop for a second. If you are constantly being dropped on your dome piece, you're not a professional wrestler. You're a dumbass. Because that's not what wrestling is about. Literally being thrown on your dome piece. I was live this past Friday reviewing SmackDown. Live with my amplified unit. And I saw Dragon Lee get tossed on his head. Cedric. I don't think it was Flip. Could have been Cedric, but I think Cedric was the one that literally just tossed Dragon Lee into the corner and he just lands on his head. There is no spot in any situation in pro wrestling where you have to get dropped on your head like that. For years and years, one of the most iconic figures in pro wrestling, his name is Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. For years and years, I watched this guy do his signature finisher move. It was called the Tombstone Piledriver. And I assure you, the one common theme every time he hit that move was his opponent, it felt like he was a foot away from the mat when he landed. His head was nowhere close. Many inches away from the mat. Again, it always felt like it was many feet. But you bought into it. You were captivated. It didn't take you away from it. You couldn't wait to see even more. That's when pro wrestling is done correctly. You shouldn't have to be getting dropped on your dome piece this many times. There shouldn't be this many concussions still today. There's more today than ever before. Now you say that's because before they weren't reported, but the way that they're happening today is so preventable. It's so preventable knowing what we know now. And to see wrestlers go, I got the knowledge, I'll be better. And then they go out there and they get dropped on their head time after time. This week alone, guys, roughly, because I lost count. I went out of my way to try to keep count and I lost count. But the bare minimum I saw across WWE and AEW shows, I saw individuals. And again, a lot of this was in the same matches. Like the same dude would get dropped on his dome piece about 5 or 6 times. But I saw 75 plus instances where somebody got dropped on their head. That's this week alone across WWE and AEW. 75. And you wonder why Mox is being concussed and Ricochet is in concussion protocol. And so many others. Every single show we're hearing somebody is going through protocol. Sometimes it's deemed it's not a concussion. Sometimes it's just a stinger. Sometimes it's this, X, Y, Z. Why? Are you kidding me? This is not wrestling. I have friends traveling this world as I speak in those rings. I've been in that ring. I can tell you there is no scenario where you should be dropped on your head legit, let alone many times a show, week, month, and year. Again, once or twice, it's a coincidence. 3, 4 times plus, it's a trend. And that tells me you're not a very good pro wrestler. I tell you gymnastics is your thing, but I wouldn't even want to see them dropped on their dome piece. Name's BC Amplified. Till next time, and there will be that next time. Top guys, we're out. BC saying check you.